So the story begins with someone tagging Nazi Kapital across the Kuhn family tombstone. Klaus Michael Kuhn was born in 1937. He's worth over $44 billion, making him Germany's richest man and one of the richest people on the planet.
Yeah, Klaus-Michael Kuehne within, a few decades, particularly the last few years since the COVID-19 pandemic, has become Germany's richest man as the majority shareholder of Kuhn and Nagel, which is the world's largest freight forwarding company. This is a family business. It was started by his grandfather, August Kuhne, and a man named Alfred Nagel. And it was really his father and his uncle, Werner and Alfred, who built it up to a global company in the Third Reich. And they did it at the expense of, millions of Europeans, mainly Jewish Europeans, by expropriating, well, first of all, expropriating a Jewish shareholder, Adolf Maas, in 1933, but mainly through the so-called embark, which was also tagged across the family grave. This kind of cryptic note on the grave. And the Emmerkschön, which is in German is an abbreviation for Möbelaktion, which means furniture action, denotes the operation that the Nazi authorities did during from 42 through 44, which was in liaison with the perpetrating of the Holocaust. In Western Europe was the mass removal seizure or robbing of or emptying of houses of Jewish families after they had been deported to concentration and extermination camps. So families were deported, houses stood empty. These houses would be taken, their contents, the entire households would be taken to warehouses, and from there on, Kuhn and Nagel would transport these looted goods to Germany. And this was mainly done in the Netherlands, France, Belgium, and Luxembourg. That's where there was a contract made between the Nazi authorities and Kuhn and Nagel to forward these looted goods, these shipments of looted goods, mainly per ships, also to lesser extent by trucks or trains. But it was really, and it wasn't just only household goods. I mean, it got kind of this clinical term furniture action, but it was also art, for example, very valuable art, which Kuhn and Nagel transported on behalf of the Nazi authorities. Entire libraries, valuable books, but mainly it was, hundreds of thousands of houses of Jewish families and their entire contents. So it was really a direct profiteering of the Holocaust that Kuhn and Nagel did during the Third Reich. Of course, Klaus-Michael Kuhne was born in 1937 and was 7 when the war ended. He didn't have, of course, he didn't have any role in the profiteering that his father and his uncle did. But what he has been doing very insidiously in particularly the last decades is covering this history up, or refusing to acknowledge this history in any meaningful way. And one of the things I discovered during the reporting of my article was that he had commissioned a study at Handelsblatt Research Institute, which is a independent research institute affiliated with Handelsblatt, a newspaper, which is kind of the Wall Street Journal, if you will, or the Financial Times of Germany. And the researcher spent a year on the study. He had commissioned it for the 125th year anniversary of Kuhn and Nagel in 2015. And when they came back with the final product, and he saw that they had included the expropriation of Adolf Maas, the role of Kuhn and Nagel in the embark shown, his father and uncle being Nazi Party members, he shelved the study. He didn't want to have it published because he said, allegedly, during a phone conference, my father wasn't a Nazi. Mein Vater war kein Nazi. And there was end of discussion. And the study has been shelved ever since. I didn't get to see it in the course of my reporting, but the existence was confirmed to me, and that hasn't been disputed since. So that was really, as with the book I wrote, Nazi Billionaires, it was really about the contemporary cover-up, using the history as a backstory to what is Germany's richest man trying to cover up, essentially.
Yeah. Kuhn and Nagel is still publicly traded, even though it is known that they were the logistics for that mobile action, the looting of millions of Jewish and others houses during World War II. How devastating would it actually be for the company if it were formally admitted, like Michael Nagel actually admitted?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it Kuehne Nagel trades on the Swiss stock exchange, right? And but Klaus-Michael Kuehne is the majority shareholder, so it's not a very liquid stock to begin with. So it's not like there wouldn't be a huge detriment to his share price or the sales of the company. I mean, it's a humongous company, right? Kuehne Nagel in 2023 had 33 billion in revenue. It has 80,000 employees, has more than 1,000 offices worldwide, right? It made an incredible amount of money during the COVID-19 pandemic, when, of course, freight rates were skyrocketing across the globe, and the entire logistics cycle was upended, and Kuhn and Nagel, I can't no other way to say it, but made a killing. I mean, profited, made it did incredibly well, and that's really what propelled Klaus-Michael Kuhne to be since 2021 to be Germany's richest man. He is not only the largest shareholder of Kuhn and Nagel, he is also the largest shareholder of Lufthansa Group, right? Which doesn't only include Lufthansa, but also Austrian, Swiss Air, huge cargo, huge military and defense side. I mean, really a behemoth, far more than just the airline group. It is the largest shareholder of Hapag-Lloyd, which is one of the largest shipping companies in the world. He's the largest shareholder of Brenntag, which is a massive chemical distributor. And he is a large shareholder of HSV, which is the Hamburg football club, because Klaus-Michael Kuhne was born and raised in Hamburg, but has been living as in tax exile in Switzerland for the past 50 years. He's 87 years old now, as you mentioned. And what he claims, that because he has publicly said something about what has been going with regards to history, and he says, well, we can't do any historical research because our archives were bombed during World War II. Our corporate archives were destroyed in Hamburg and Bremen. And I found out that's actually not true. There is a corporate archive in Hamburg which contains documents starting in 1902 and running all the way up to the present. So he's really trying to keep this history under the lid. But I'm the first one to report on this to an international audience, similar to what I did with Nazi Billionaires. But the German press, I would say, has been writing fairly frequently since 2015, particularly one man called Henning Bleil from Bremen, who has really been kind of dogged, and who's really, without his persistence, many of the wartime activities of Kuhn and Nagel would not have come to light. And I cite him extensively in my piece as well. because as a result of his efforts, an Aryanization monument has been erected in Bremen, in the center of Bremen. I don't know if you've ever been to Bremen, beautiful city. And you know, coincidentally or not so coincidentally enough, the monument, the memorial to remember the millions of Jews that were Aryanized or that were expropriated, that lost everything and were subsequently murdered. That memorial is in front of the Kuhn and Nagel, Germany's headquarters in Bremen, where they founded in 1890.
Okay, so he's got to burn the pick.
Exactly.
I mean, so the journalistic pressure forced upon Kuhn and Nagel to open up those archives, Michael said that it was akin to blackmail. Do you give any credence to that argument, the fact that he was 7 when the war ended, and anything that you're just going to be digging up is going to be devastating to the company and all the employees, and, you know, really that he's not a Nazi, therefore you should just move on? Do you give any credence to his side of the argument?
I don't. None at all. I mean, he has a responsibility to be transparent about the past, particularly now that he has so much economic, financial, and political power vested upon him. You know, he is this man is not only Germany's richest citizen, but he is also the shareholder of companies that are incredibly crucial to the German economy, right? So for a country which prides itself of reckoning so well with its dark history, Klaus Michael Kuhne, as its wealthiest inhabitant or its wealthiest citizen or national, is doing a shoddy job to put it mildly. No, he has a responsibility also towards the hundreds of thousands that Kuhn and Nagel stole to help transport their stolen goods to, or the survivors of those, or the heirs of Adolf Maas, who was pushed out of Kuhn and Nagel as a 45% shareholder by Alfred and Werner Kuhne in April 1933. It's a moral responsibility towards history. It has nothing to do with paying money. He doesn't have to pay any money. Kuhn and Nagel paid into the compensation and restitution fund for forced and slave laborers. But he has to, he has a responsibility he has a moral responsibility toward the past, in my view. Now, more so because Klaus Michael Kuhne is 87 years old. He got married to his wife when he was 52 and she was 51. They don't have any children. So his entire fortune, which is, the 44 billion is a low estimate because people close to him have been telling me it's close to 50 or 60 billion. That entire fortune will be transferred to a foundation, a Kuhne Foundation, and it will be Europe's largest private foundation. So it's it's particularly then having Europe's or one of the world's largest foundations without any recourse or reckoning with the past. I mean, it will be exceptionally weird. It will be exceptionally damaging and exceptionally, deeply. It will be a deeply problematic thing, I would say, so for Europe's largest. Not have any transparency about the past.
From reading the article, it feels like his withdrawal to acknowledge the sins of his father and the sins of the past comes from a deep, deep love for his father. He acknowledges that it was the closest person to him in his life, the person who taught him everything. When he dies, he wants to be buried next to him. But in Michael's own life, all of his philanthropic efforts seem to be quite positive good at the end of the day, pretty much exclusively contributing to the betterment of whether it's Hamburg or the arts or various, education initiatives. So that huge fortune, which will be transferred into which will be turned into a sort of foundation after his death, like it is all positive sum at the end of the day, and it's really just maybe a loyalty and a relationship to his father that he just doesn't want to acknowledge this really dirty past. So I'm just sort of pushing more up against the idea of, is it so necessary that he acknowledges what has happened when you and other journalists and other people throughout Germany are bringing it to light anyway? So it's not like Kuhn and Nagel can hide behind it. They just don't necessarily admit it themselves.
Well, I mean, they do admit, but in the one statement that they put out in 2015, they said, well, you know, they don't really. They said, well, you know, we also had to do a lot of efforts to survive World War II. I mean, that's a totally perverse and distorted way of putting history, right?
That is.
And I think what they're doing is not so much not acknowledging history, but is totally perverting the course of history. And I think that is a very, particularly in this day and age of misinformation and disinformation, you know, is just an insidious fact, is an insidious development. And I think that should not be the case for a company individual, you know, with that much economic influence. You know, it's not, again, it's about being transparent about history, and owning up to that. But, you know, his relationship with his father is actually a very interesting question, because it apparently wasn't a very good relationship from what I've been told.
Okay.
I didn't really delve into it too much in the article, but it was, his father was very tough on him. And I think he grew up, you know, there seems to be a huge loyalty conflict there. Where, interestingly enough, because he is an heir, contrary to all the other heirs I write about, he's actually an heir who became far more successful than his father did. Which sets him apart from all the other heirs I write about, who are literally heirs, but Klaus Michael Kuhne really made Kuhn and Nagel into a global behemoth. But he has a deep loyalty conflict to his father. It seems that they did not have a very loving relationship, and it seems that in any way to disavow his father means to, you know, also come to face, or to face up to his own kind of deeply troubled personal relationship with his father and also mother, apparently.
Yeah. Or maybe it's just the deep, deep stubbornness of an old man, not willing to make a big apology or make a big acknowledgement, something that you've been hiding your whole life.
Yeah, but I think the resistance has been there. I mean, this topic became something that has been discussed since, I would say, 2015, right? So it's been 9 years. So yeah, you're right. So since he was 78, which is quite old. Yeah.
It's shocking, and this is obviously something your book makes really apparent, but just how much of the German industrial base and sort of economic foundation is rooted in its Nazi past.
Yeah.
Apart from Kuhn and Nagel, are there any blaringly large, multi-billion-dollar publicly traded firms that are still denying the sort of roots?
Well, there's a few firms that haven't commissioned like studies, in addition to Kuhn and Nagel. I would say it's been Siemens, which has not been particularly forthcoming about their involvement in the Third Reich. You also have this larger group, Haniel, which used to own Metro and supermarkets, and they own Silesia and other major also industrialists, which haven't commissioned any kind of study. And then it was Henkel. It was the Henkel family, which famously owns Henkel, which produces Persil. But they have commissioned a study by now, so there will be something.
There's an accusation in the article that Kuhn and Nagel was as egregious as the creators of Zyklon B, used the chemicals in the gas chambers. Do you think that's a little bit too hyperbolic, or is that in line with what you think?
Well, I mean, the quote by Professor Frank Bayer, who heads the Center of Holocaust Studies at the Institute for Contemporary History in Munich, is about companies that directly profited from the Holocaust, right? And I would say, and he makes a comparison. I mean, there's a few. I mean, he compares it to, right, companies that produce Cyclone B, which was IG Farben, the largest chemical conglomerate at the time, and the Gusa was a joint venture. Then it was those that built the crematoria in the extermination camps, which was Tupf and Zöhne. And then he also, the Gusa was also the company which smelted the gold that was robbed out of the corpses from people murdered in the gas chambers, and smelted them into gold or silver. What Kuhn and Nagel did was profit directly from the mass extermination of European Jews, by transporting looted goods of those that were on their way to the gas chambers. So I don't think that is a. I don't. I mean, it is a. I mean, this is sickening to say, but it's a. They're all part of the logistics chain. I mean, there's no other way to put it. And Kuhn and Nagel is there. It starts with the moving companies. Like in the Netherlands, you had a very famous one called Puls, which even became a verb, to pulsen. To this moving company, which basically had the monopoly on moving looted goods from emptied houses to these warehouses. Kuhn and Nagel would transport these goods to Germany, where they would be given, or there would be auctioned off at sapphire sale prices, or given to those families or individuals whose houses have been destroyed by Allied bombings. Those families that had been deported were on trains by the Reichsbahn or by whatever national rail services like the NS in the Netherlands, right? And then they ended up in the extermination and concentration camps, which also many banks played a role in, and they have fessed up there in financing the construction of those, like Deutsche Bank or Allianz as an insurer. So they're all part of this logistics chain, right? And they all played a part in profiting directly from the Holocaust. And most, if not many, if not most of these companies have acknowledged their role in that, but Kuehne and Nagel hasn't.
And it seems like they were spared post-war prosecution because of ties to British and American intelligence. And it got me thinking, like, how many egregious actors in World War II were actually sort of spared the consequences of their actions because of the rebuilding effort that British and American intelligence was involved in Central Europe?
Well, that's a very good question. It will be a lot. I mean, we don't know the extent of that yet. I mean, we know it with regards to, of course, those scientists which were taken in by the US as part of the Cold War rivalry, like Werner von Braun, etc. But in regards to businessmen that basically got off scot-free because of their importance to American or British intelligence, like Kuhn and Nagel, which operated as a cover or as a cipher, basically, for the predecessor to West Germany's intelligence service, the BND, or it was called then Operation Galen. There will be many. We don't know the extent of that. I think there hasn't been too much research done into that so far.
And it was Kuhn and Nagel's role as a central logistics company that did largely spare them, because there was this huge rebuilding effort in Germany. Was that the reason why?
No. The reason why was that German intelligence operatives could operate easily from Kuhn and Nagel offices, because it has this kind of unassuming logistics, like the most boring. It's like the most boring thing ever, right? Freight forwarding. It's super boring. Like,
honestly, that got me thinking, David. I actually used to work for a third-party logistics company,
Yeah.
And it was inconceivable to me that a company like that could scale efficiently enough to be worth billions and billions of dollars. So
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing. It just must be a pure scale play. But do they just have hundreds of thousands of trucks on the road, tens of thousands of ships? How does
Yeah.
a company like that even get to that type of size?
Yeah. I mean, they build it consistently out. I mean, Klaus Kuhne is really the reason why they build it out consistently, particularly over the past 3 decades, and really scaled it throughout the 70s, 80s, 90s, aughts, and until now. I mean, it's really it's remarkable. I mean, you have a few other players like that, right? You have DSV, DB
Mm.
Schenker. It's yeah.
All right. Well, let's finish on this, David, because this is obviously central to your book, Nazi Billionaires, but then as well, a point that you dedicate time to in the article, and it's how Germany is thinking about the politics of memory these days, how that's
Yeah.
evolving.
Well, it's not evolving very well. Judging from the success of the AFD, I think it just seems to be. Germany is in a bad place at the moment. The economy is, the economy is shrinking. Inflation is rising. The politics are gridlocked. Basically, the current ruling coalition doesn't get along with each other anymore. I think a lot of, particularly individual citizens of the former Eastern European states, they're not happy with where their life is going economically, and Angela Merkel's compassionate decision, might I add, to let in more than 1 million or 1.5 refugees during the 2015-2016 refugee crises, coupled with the influx of Ukrainian refugees from the war, coupled with economic decline. I mean, it has given this very volatile and very dangerous mix of a rise of nativism and jingoism and which is turning out to be a boon to the AFD and to
Yeah.
the right wing flank of the CDU. And it's a scare, and the politics of memory are very much in play because the AFD, Germans have been told now for so many years not to be proud of who they are, and right, of to bow their head in shame for the murder of millions. But as you know, the Germans have this perverse mix of self-hatred and superiority. So it's always the question: what's going to win out, right?
Explain for the audience, rather, what shade of pernicious, populist, right wing color is AFD? Because they might be presented in the media as a genuine neo-Nazi party. Something about in my gut tells me that's a little bit too hectic. I couldn't imagine a party that
Yeah.
brazen would be so popular, but just how edgy and concerning is AFD?
So the AfD was founded in 2013 as an anti-Euro party and an anti-EU party, right? But it was quickly hijacked around the during the refugee crisis in 2015-2016 by a group of more when it really emerged as an anti-immigration and anti-Islam, anti-Muslim, also anti-Semitic tendencies, which had one extreme right wing which engaged in Holocaust denial or whitewashing of history or distorting history. And a part which was, and which was more moderate, which was simply just anti-immigration and anti-Islam. And, a lot of people have seized on that platform and and it has since one of their most, and I quote him in the piece, one of their most extreme politicians, this man called Björn Höcke, who used this chant "Everything for Germany," which was this SA chant, the chant that the paramilitary, the Nazi paramilitary, would use in the early in the early 1930s. He says things about that. He refers to the Holocaust memorial as a memorial of shame planted in the heart of Germany, and and things like that.
And how
So,
significant of a political party are they?
oh yeah, so they entered parliament as a large opposition party in 2017. They lost votes in 2021, and now seemingly they will come in again as the largest opposition party in the elections, which will take place sometime next year. There's talks. The official date is September 2025, but there's talks of it happening in March 2025.
Yeah, wow. So the politics of memory is moving away from keep your head down, shame, and more to let's just fucking move on. It's been enough generations.
Let's move on. Exactly. Let's move on. Let's not be defined by this. Let's, celebrate our German heritage. Let's celebrate, our thousands year of German heritage is what they're claiming.
Yeah.
And not a shame, but it's like, long enough have we been cowed into, of retribution or, for the horrors of the Third Reich, and and
all right,
and
David.
exactly that.
So everyone can find the article in Vanity Fair about Kuhn and Nagel in the link. Also, your book, Nazi Billionaires, an Outperformer interview going deep into Nazi billionaires, which obviously has a lot of crossover themes to what we were speaking about today. You're also reporting as a Middle East correspondent for a Dutch newspaper. And we did an interview shortly after October 7th, where you were one of the first sort of reporters on the ground there. So is there anything else you would like to mention to the audience about what you're doing, or draw their attention somewhere?
No, I'm still reporting as a Middle East correspondent for the Financiële Dagblad, which is a Dutch financial daily. And, things in the Middle East are still very bad. And the situation in the region I'm reporting on that daily. And, it took me a year and a half to put this Kuhne piece together, and I'm very glad that it's out. And you can find me on X and Instagram at David de Jong.
Amazing. Dankjewel, David. Thank you very much, mate.
Bedankt, Ryan. Good speaking to you again.
See you, mate.